Perfect.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, how's it going, Rachel?
Good. So we're live. We're just going to wait about 6 minutes till people file into the room. And if you are on and you're hanging out waiting to talk to Paul, I'm going to ask you, if possible, to use the share button underneath our videos and invite your friends, because I think this is going to be a really entertaining talk, and I don't mean that lightly. So, Paul, I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite TV show right now? What are you watching?
Okay. You know, there's only so many shows that I'll make appointment TV, right? That I need to see it like the minute that it's on. And the one show that I do that right now with is RuPaul's Drag Race. It's my favorite show. There's something, it's just wonderful and colorful and funny, and there's something oddly self-affirming about seeing all of these men in dresses. And you know, it's great to see a lot of talent from all over the place. I don't know if I'd ever do drag professionally myself, but it's anytime I watch it, it's like, oh, it'd be fun to try for a night.
But there's no scripts in reality TV show, right?
No. So in reality TV, what happens is that a production team will come in with a breakdown. They'll have a rundown of a shot list, basically, of things that they'll need to take. They have a rough idea of the kinds of material that they would want from a testimonial or from a challenge or whatever thing that they've set up on set. So it's not scripted in the traditional sense, but they are definitely looking for certain kinds of shots, certain kinds of sentences and feedback, and they'll make you do several takes until they get what they need. So it's not really formally reality. Scripted. Yeah, okay. Very far from it.
Oh, okay.
How about you, Rachel? What are you watching these days?
I've been watching, mostly Netflix, binging on Netflix things. I've been watching, the only thing live is Fresh Off the Boat.
That's right. Yeah.
That's a good one.
It's good.
Yeah.
Natasha Khan, she's so talented and wonderful. Minority showrunner. They're very rare. Intersectional too, diverse and female. Did you see Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23 from a few years ago?
No, but I saw that go up, yeah.
That was her too. The sensibility is there. The girls in that are super funny. I don't know if you're a huge James Van Der Beek fan, but they make a full meal out of his guest appearances. So it's really great to see on network TV that there's progress happening. Right. That a show like that, 5 years ago, would never have gotten a second season, and now it lives and it's found an audience, know, and it's important. Representation is so important, I think, in media. Right. It's good to see yourself, and those kids are hilarious. Yeah. Which one's your favorite kid?
I forgot all the names. I guess Evan, the smallest one.
Yeah, the smallest one. He's so cute.
They write him so well. Yeah. So let me ask you guys, what are you watching on TV right now? Tell us what you're watching. What's really good?
Tell me what I'm missing. Cause so working in television, we are the most voracious consumers of television.
Really? Okay.
We'll watch things regularly. Oh, so I have a friend. Wait.
That's not totally true, because I know people who produce don't always have time to create content as well. So
I think I'm just talking like below the line. I'm talking like assistants that have like time and they're rolling calls and then they'll sneak in shows. I have a friend so he worked on Glee, he worked at MTV, and he has a grid. He has a grid of all the different shows that he needs to watch, and it's on his Tumblr, so you can check it out whenever you want. And he'll always be like, I'm only like 90 hours behind, guys. And he'll watch stuff not only here, but stuff in the UK, stuff in Australia. It's ridiculous, his appetite. And then also happening right now, or starting from earlier this year, probably like around February, it's pilot season.
Okay.
For networks. So this is when we start seeing a lot of new materials, a lot of new scripts. You can see how the previous year's big features and big series had an influence on the things that they decided to develop for the next year.
Interesting.
So that's something that everyone's getting ramped up for, because upfronts are the second week of May in New York, and then that's when a full slate is unveiled. But the interesting thing about Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu,
Oh yeah, those networks.
Everything kind of rolls. It's not super seasonal.
Right.
So the two effects there is that it's not necessarily super trend driven. One, and then two, I will talk a lot about half-hour versus hour-long formats in the talk. But now with streaming, you're not married to that at all.
Right.
It can be whatever you want.
Right. Really quick. Melissa is saying that she's watching Arrow on CW and rewatching The West Wing.
Cool.
And Daredevil season 2. Do you watch those?
So I mean, I'll check in with Arrow every now and then just for some body shame, just for some like how are you able to do those ridiculous pull-ups? Why is it that every single person in Star City has abs? How is that even possible? But it's the CW, that's kind of their game.
Of course, yeah.
The West Wing, man. Like I remember I had friends of friends who'd worked on the show and worked with Aaron and all those crazy stories. He would like slip when he was really up against the deadline, he would slip pages one at a time underneath his door, like instead of, because normally it's just like here's a full script. Here's the full story, 50 or 60 pages. No, but Aaron was just like, I'm just going to slip it in one at a time because people are waiting on the other side of a locked door.
Right.
But anytime that they would assemble like one act together, the pages were so good,
Right.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've checked out West Wing again, but it's oddly prescient for a lot of reasons, particularly this year and in an election year. They were able to call a lot of stuff. It's so good. I haven't checked out Daredevil yet. I love Charlie Cox. I think Charlie Cox is vastly underrated, so I'm really glad that he got to be the lead of a fantastic show.
I think I saw a couple of the first ones, and then I just I was done with it. If it doesn't really catch me the first, I would say 3 episodes, I think I'm finished. So
okay, yeah.
Although I hear it's good, but it just didn't. It wasn't my thing.
Understood. I think it's tricky because I think Marvel's taste when it comes to developing stuff for Netflix,
right?
That they go super dark. Right?
It was really dark, yeah.
Because that's not something that they necessarily get to do in their features.
Right.
Everything's pretty colorful, right? I mean, it's Spider-Man. It's red, and so it's a nice opportunity between that and Jessica Jones to do something darker with some of their smaller titles,
right?
And it's weird because I think I would say for like cable and for other like binge watching things, they're kind of banking on the fact that they'll get you maybe in 7, as opposed to 1 or 2 or 3. And
they want you to last with it. That's right.
Right. It's already playing. They're doing the work. They're doing it for you, right? So what's the thing I need to check out on Netflix? I still haven't seen Wet Hot American Summer on Netflix yet. That whole series, and I loved that movie. I loved it so much.
Okay, I think I saw the first episode, then I also didn't continue. Maybe I'm not a TV buff as much as I thought I was.
But what's great about talking about television is that no matter what walk of life you're from or what stage of life you're in, you have some sort of relationship with it. This is it's a community building thing.
It is.
We have. It's a nice opportunity to bond and have a salient talking point, which is super rare because now with information coming in from everywhere, everything's so fragmented, but we still have these few things that we can share and talk about. So
right.
TV is great in that way.
Well, we got some people on.
Yay!
I see Amanda. Hi, Amanda. Everyone from KBDA is on. And Amanda, if you're interested in jumping on screen with everyone at KBDA, we'd love to have you. Julie's on. Hi, Alyssa, of course. And Sai, of course. Thank you guys for coming. We'll get started here. So thank you and welcome to Typography Dojo. This is where we learn from the masters in type and typography. I'm Rachel Elner with TypeEd, and today we're joined by Paul Mendoza. So hi, Paul. So I find Paul's story very intriguing, but before we get started, I just wanted to ask you to share this out with your friends by clicking the share button underneath the video. And also, if you have any questions for Paul, use the questions and topics tab underneath our video screen as well. So Paul, can you introduce yourself to the group?
Yeah, of course. Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Mendoza. I am a graphic designer at Looking, a studio in beautiful El Segundo, California. I am also the membership co-director for AIGA LA, the fifth largest chapter of the largest and oldest professional design organization in the world. And that is how I met Rachel initially, through our shared involvement in that organization. We've had fabulous times, Rachel. We do. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
It is.
You know?
But Paul, so when I first met you, I did not even know that you were in network TV. Can you tell me your journey about how you got from network TV to graphic design?
Yeah, of course. So when I initially made the move to LA, it was for school, and it was with the intention of staying here for work. I definitely knew I wanted to work in entertainment. I just wasn't sure what part of it. I tried a lot of things fresh out of college. Mm-hmm. I went to UCLA, for those who are, keeping track. Go Bruins. Worked in nonprofit film festivals for a while, worked for LACMA for a little bit. Then I worked on my first television show in 2005. And it was an NBC show called E-Ring, which is about the outermost ring of the Pentagon. Okay. It was a Jerry Bruckheimer show. NBC wanted to get into the Jerry Bruckheimer game, just like CBS did with CSI. So they got Benjamin Bratt and Dennis Hopper, and we basically sent Benjamin Bratt into different countries, like Rambo, basically. We magically made a full season of television, but we didn't air all of them because American Idol was in our spot. So then when it came back, we just got creamed. It's a shame, though, because they pulled it right before there was an episode where the main bad guy in Peru was named Paul Mendoza. Okay. And they say the full name in the cut like 8 times. I was so bummed because I was like, oh, man, I would have been like famous for 15 minutes. But anyway, that was my first show as a PA. Then I moved up into the writer's office as a writer's PA, then a writer's assistant, then a script coordinator, and did that for the better part of a decade. After a while, I was looking for a new creative challenge. Around 2011, 2012, I took my first graphic design course while I was on hiatus from a show. And because I was like, well, it's something I'd always been curious about. And I really loved it and decided to keep going. So I got the full DCA certificate at UCLA Extension, finished that up in 2014, got a job like a month or 2 after that, and got involved with AIGA LA shortly after that, and then was introduced to my current boss, John Clark, who hired me as an employee late last year. So it's interesting. It's a pivot that I was never expecting, but I'm very grateful for it and thankful for it because it allows me to flex the kind of creative muscle that is tough to do in TV on any side of the creative process because it's so fragmented.
Right.
You know?
Cool. So today you're going to talk to us a little bit about Courier.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's right.
All right.
It is yeah.
You want to get started?
Okay, let's go. So I'm going to share the screen.
Okay.
And I'm going to put this up. All right. How's that look?
Looks good. Can everyone see this and also hear us okay? Just want to make sure. Okay.
We good?
I hope so.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead.
All right.
Good.
Yes. So, hi, everybody. So I mentioned that I am a designer at Looking. I'm the membership co-director at AIGA LA. And earlier this morning, I was at Wrapped Studio for Creative Mornings. And it was a great talk with a writer from Vice News about risk and national security. The donuts are always super good. The cold brew coffee was delicious, and it's always nice to see friends. But the thing that really struck me as I was leaving the studio in Culver City was that I drove by Culver Studios just down the street from Wrapped Studios, and I have fond memories of that place. That's where I worked on a show called Love Bites. It was basically a romantic comedy anthology series. It was supposed to be the heir apparent to Sex and the City.
Does it have anything to do with vampires?
No. We made a vampire joke
at
least once. No, because I mean it was Twilight. Twilight was definitely happening. Sure. And so, and the joke was just like, why would you want to have sex with a vampire? Wouldn't vampire penises be cold? And I was like, yeah, they would be cold. So I'm not sure how that works.
Okay.
So anyway, so it just kind of brought me back, like what happens when I kind of visit most parts of LA, having lived here for a long time. It brings me back to working in the business, in television. It feels like a lifetime ago. It feels like a super long time ago, but actually it wasn't. I've only been a designer for a couple of years, but I unwittingly was in some way, shape, or form a designer. I worked with a lot of type in television, and I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. But the stock and trade that we have in TV is Courier. So it is to me the typeface that built this city. Our shows, our collective consciousness, our dreams, the things that we want to see on stage or at home or in a movie theater, it all started with a blank page filled with monospaced typeface, a very unassuming, standard, business-like typeface. And from there, we get to build these incredible worlds and experiences. And to me, it is the typeface that gives LA an identity. It fuels us. It nourishes us, or it tries. So we'll start with Act 1. Just a brief history of Courier. I'll just kind of talk you through some interesting signposts as the font was created back in the 1960s. It was created in 1961, specifically for the IBM Selectric typewriter. It's quite a beauty. The typeface itself is designed by Howard Kettler, who goes by Bud. So Bud Kettler had this to say about Courier. A letter can be just an ordinary messenger, or it can be the courier, which radiates dignity, prestige, and stability. Oh man! So Hran Papazian pointed out this fun tidbit about this picture that I found of Bud. He is holding a bottle of Bud in that picture, which is pretty.
How apropos!
Well, yeah, very adorable of him. Thank you, Bud. So when Bud Kettler designed Courier, it came in two different weights. So you had the pica and the elite. The pica is the one that's set in 12 point, and then elite was occasionally used as a secondary weight in 10 point. But when we look at scripts, when you look at any script from any show, all the examples that I will show you today, they all use that pica weight, the 12 point. When we generally think of Courier, or at least when I think of Courier outside of screenplays, I generally think of government documents. Has anyone here seen The Fog of War? It was a documentary done by Errol Morris. And it's funny because it actually has a lot to do today with national security and the talk that happened at Creative Mornings. Anyhow,
it's a really good movie. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. And there were many reviews who joked that Courier should win some sort of award as a supporting player because all of a lot of what you look at are classified government documents. That it's not just Courier itself, but the way that it's blacked out. It has a character of I think this is where it gets a lot of its serious character from. It's because of the information contained. It's like espionage and confidential classified information. And to some degree, that is how screenplays are meant to be. They were not necessarily meant to be a consumer-facing document. Back in the golden age of Hollywood, you would have these centerpools full of typists who would be reproducing scripts one at a time. It was a very noisy profession back in the day. We have it much easier now when it comes to generating scripts. It's a much quieter affair. But it's interesting to me how even as business has advanced past monospaced typefaces, past Courier, when we're talking about business, you have so many options available to you through word processing or design or any sort of layout. When we're talking about the entertainment business and we're talking about screenplays and teleplays, Courier is still used and it's still the standard. It's always been funny to me why that hasn't changed. But when I ask a lot of people, when I ask my friends, my professional screenwriters and lots of people who work in the industry, there's a certain romantic notion that they'll attach to Courier. It allows them to be a part of history, that they were writing things that would have been just like the same things that were written X amount of years ago. So I think it's really part of that nostalgia that we have. It's the sort of dreaming that brought a bunch of people out here to LA in the first place. So that's a little bit of Courier's history. We'll move on to Act 2, how we currently use Courier in film and TV. So before I was using Illustrator and InDesign every day, the program that I had open all the time was Final Draft, which is one of two main programs. I would say it's the dominant program that people use for screenwriting. This is a quick screenshot of what that looks like. You'll have ways to kind of navigate your story blocks on the right, and then you'll see how there's a very generous left-hand margin to account for the hole punching on the left. A lot of macros are built in so that you can get to your action sequences and to your dialogue lines and to your parentheticals really quickly. Once you get the hang of it, it's a pretty quick navigation. I'll go ahead and break down for you now the 4 different kinds of screenplays that you encounter in television. We'll start with the one that I'm the most familiar with, which is 1 Hour Network and Basic Cable. So I've included a screenshot of one of the shows that I worked on several years ago, Friday Night Lights. It was a great experience and led to a lot of really amazing work after that. Very thankful for that experience. So you can see how even here I'm a little embarrassed because like the margins here don't quite line up for the headers, but you'll see about like 1.5 to 2 inches. This is where we start the dialogue indent, and then 1.5 inches in from there is when we start the character indent. And each scene is numbered. There's continued lines at the top and the bottom of every page. You get some standard 1 line of metadata at the top. So this is how most 1-hour drama scripts will work. I've made adjustments here and there, which I'll talk about later, in an effort to make these documents more readable. But that's basically what a 1 hour basic cable script would look like. Then you'll have something like this. It's a bit more bare bones, something you'd have 1 hour premium cable and streaming. They're going to be treated more like screenplays. There are no act breaks. There aren't going to be as many requirements for production information. This is a screenshot of a Netflix series called Love, which is the Judd Apatow romantic comedy series starring Gillian Fleet, I want to say. So that's the thing with that format, is that it's like technically as long as an hour-long show with commercials, but there's no natural way to break it. You can see also that if I go back and forth, that the line length, they go longer with the line length. That's definitely been a trend for dialogue. People will just kind of want to squeeze more and more lines onto a page, basically, in order to get more content in there. I've never heard a writer say like, "Oh no, let's bring the margins in." No one's ever said like, "Well, we can do more with less." That would like never happen ever. And I'll get into that when we talk about other shows as well. So that's the contrast between 1 hour network and 1 hour premium cable and streaming. And then on the other side, what you have is a half-hour show. So here is a screenshot of Parks and Recreation, an episode from season 2, Greg Bacchitis. If you're a Parks and Rec fan, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Freaking Greg Bacchitis, that little snot. So you'll see here that for this table draft, they actually do like 2 lines in a header. They excluded, that's interesting, they excluded any sort of production scene numbers or marks. They indicate talking heads with in the same line as their action, but underlining it. And again, with they keep on extending the line length here. Like, it just keeps getting longer. At some point, I feel like it's just going to extend to the entire page. Maybe for like Gilmore Girls or like Grey's Anatomy, they're going to do something like that. So that's what a single camera looks like. And when you think of a half-hour single camera, it's going to be a comedy like Veep or Modern Family or The Office or Fresh Off the Boat, where there's no audience, there's no laugh track, but it's shot in a way that's more conventional, like a drama. Only they take 5 days to shoot their episodes, as opposed to an average of 7 or 8 days that are spent shooting an hour long. So that's what a half-hour single camera looks like. And then the final example I'll show you, this is a half-hour multicam. And here's a screenshot of a Friends episode, the one where Ross and Rachel, where they kiss. This was, God, what season was this? Is this season 2? Season 2. They kiss in season 2. But anyway, this is back when like you didn't really have easy PDF output, hence the kind of the photocopy degraded nature of the type right now. It's interesting what they do in half-hour multicam is that they'll actually bump up the leading. They'll bump up the leading to be to essentially be double spacing. The reason for that is when you do a half-hour multi-camera taping, and this is going to be like Friends, The Big Bang Theory, 2.5 Men, Mike and Molly, a lot of the stuff on CBS, where you have a live audience track, and it's more in the tradition of sitcoms that we loved, as kids, I guess, for a certain generation, like I Love Lucy or Full House or Boy Meets World, that sort of format. So the reason that they add so much space in there is when you're doing these tapings, you've had some rehearsal time, but you're going through this entire thing live. They'll go through an entire scene live. They'll stop. They'll rewrite things that need to be rewritten, and then they'll go through the entire scene again. But it's not like you'd have any time to type anything up. This allows for more room to make those notes and changes on the fly. And the margins on either side are also very generous so that you can make notes and jokes. And not only just for the writers themselves, but for your script supervisors, for your production crew that need to flag their own information as well. So you'll see between half-hour multicam and half-hour single cam, there's more room to breathe in a multi-camera script because of all the things that they need to do on the fly within those 3 or 4 hours where they're taping on a Tuesday night on a studio stage. So those are the 4 formats that I'll just go over them again. 1, 2, 3, 4 right now. And ultimately, when it comes to setting type for these scripts, it's funny how you when I see scripts from different shows, how technically they're all the same length. They all cut down to 1 hour or 42 minutes, or a half-hour comedy is supposed to cut down to between 20 and 21 minutes. But the scripts themselves, or the lengths, are like all over the place. For 1 hour dramas, you will expect that from shows that are talkier, like Gilmore Girls, for instance. Okay, here's the crazy thing about Gilmore Girls coming in at 74 pages. Like, real thing. Wow. So their outlines will come in at 30 pages with fully fledged chunks of dialogue. Outlines are only really supposed to come in at 10 pages. But with Gilmore, things time out fine, even though the script is really long, because of the speed and dexterity at which their actors have to deliver their material. The average is going to be closer to something like Friday Night Lights, like a 52, a 51. Then you'll have more action-driven shows like Smallville that can come in at a 46. If you were to look back at shows from the 80s and the 90s, you'll see that those dramas are also super lean. Sometimes they wouldn't even crack 40 pages. But as television has grown and evolved, as we've upped the game in terms of writing and pacing, because naturally television has gotten faster and faster in their pacing, both on the drama and the comedy side, the scripts themselves have gotten longer as well. So you can see how things get newer and things get longer for the drama side. And then it's interesting too, because on the half-hour side, the script that I was looking at that came the longest that I wasn't expecting was Family Guy. And when I looked at that script, it's because of the way that show is written. You have all of these interstitials and bits that have to be broken out separately. So that adds to the weight. And then you take a show like Friends or Frasier, both of which are half-hour comedies, and they're multicam. And so, therefore, they'll need more room. They'll need that double spacing in order to account for all the things that need to happen in the taping. So they'll come in at a 48 or somewhere north of 40. And then Parks and Rec comes in basically almost as long as like a 1 hour drama, which was a surprise to me because it's technically half as long. Big Bang Theory is normally what I expect out of, a traditional half-hour multicam. A lot of room to breathe. It's not a super fast show, so then you can get things done in like 35 pages. And then you have something like Archer, which it basically gets to use the single camera format as an animated show because they don't do a lot of on-the-fly rewriting. So it gets to be kind of leaner, like half the length of what a 1 hour drama was going to be. So that's an interesting range as far as typical script lengths. But it's funny to me because the whole point of using something like Courier is that your timing is supposed to be super standard, right? Like the beauty of monospacing, the thing that every script supervisor has ever told me is that, Courier is important because that way you go from show to show or script to script, and you'll know that a page of a drama or a comedy is going to be 1 minute or 2 minutes or half a minute. And you're supposed to be able to pull these pages out of context and it's all supposed to time out the same. But then you look at these script lengths and you're like, I don't know if it is the same. There's more to it, I think, now than that, especially now that we have so many different models of entertainment, and that the whole idea of a half hour versus an hour long is becoming more and more antiquated. So, it's basically all in the timing as far as why people are so strict about using Courier. So, like, for instance, on day one of prep, the thing that always concerned my staff, the thing that always concerned me, was to come in as lean and underweight as possible. The goal is to make a script or give the illusion that a script is producible. And that always means basically as short as you can. You wouldn't want to come in bloated or overweight. That's the easiest way to like freak a production out. And because what a script supervisor will do, and as you'll see in these notes, is that they'll break it down, they'll time things out. And a lot of the times when you dissect a script like that, it can get you into a lot of trouble. So what I did mainly as a script coordinator was I set a lot of type. I would, do all the basic things that you do when dealing in publication design, but I would like break rules like they were nothing. So here's some of the things that I totally did. Like, just extending line lengths to an impossible length. And then using double dashes instead of M dashes. I feel really guilty about that one. I'm so sorry. And then, okay. So looking at scripts all the time, I find that 2 spaces after a period with a monospaced font makes for a quicker read, and where sentences break. I know that it's, especially even now with newly designed monospaced typefaces, you're supposed to be able to use single spacing. But I still find every time when I read a monospaced font or I read a script, when someone gives me that extra space between sentences, I have a cleaner read. I'd like to hear from everyone here in the chat bubble, and also from you, Rachel. Like, does your point of view change on 2 spaces after a period when using monospaced fonts, or are you still very much like single space after a period always?
Okay, guys, what do you think? Your thoughts?
Oops. Let's go back. There we go. So, like, while you chew on that, the other thing that's really tough in Courier is that the hyphen, the M dash, and the N dash are all like the same length. They're all supposed to fit the same character weight, which is hard.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's like they're trying to help, but then but the way that the font is made, it's tough to like really follow things to the letter.
Was that because there was very few keys or limited keys in the typewriter?
I think you could still do a shift. Yeah, I don't think that would have. I don't know if they would have made that much of a distinction on the typewriter itself, because you can't really do commands the way that you do in a computer. I'm not really sure where they would have even placed the key. That's a really good question, Rachel. I'm going to look that up. Because it's the sort of thing that when you're just trying to get scripts out and you're just trying to feed the machine, it's not the sort of stuff that you think about. But it's so great now that I can look back, reflect, and be like, here's what I did, and here's what I could do better. So another interesting thing typographically for Courier and the way that it's used in Final Draft is that they will give you different letting options, but they'll give you like 4 different letting options. That's all you get. And it's crazy because loose to them is 12/12. And I was just like, that's like really tight, you know? And then most of the time when you see it set, it's going to be 12/11. Regular is 12/11. And then you go tight and very tight, which is like 12/10 and 12/9. I have definitely had bosses who are like, you're going to use very tight. I'm going to get this script to under like 48, 49 pages. And I was like, I don't know if that's going to work for you. Wow. It's not that readable. And also, like, no, once they actually time it out, you're not going to be able to hide it. So
interesting.
Yeah. So, but it's just like the he who has the gold makes the rules, I guess. Most of the time, I would send things out in 12/11, and it's fine. But definitely now, as a typographer, I would push for 12/12. I think that's way more readable than
even very tight. I mean, for us, right? That setting's solid.
Oh my God! Like I would, if anything, I would like add more weight. And you do add it, but in single cam comedy, you know, then that's like almost like a 12/24, right?
Right. By the way, Alyssa says that she prefers single space.
Okay. Yes.
Period. Now, I do agree with you. I think it's easier to find where a sentence begins, but that's because of your gigantic river. So, you know, if you want to have rivers, then yes, they're more easy to pull the sentences out visually. Mm-hmm. That's just my point of view.
It's always tricky because it's like, okay, you know, if we were to think of it as a design problem, then it's like, okay, who am I serving and how are they digesting this document? How can I make this as readable and quick and fast as possible? And so that was kind of my rationale for doing 2 spaces after, even though I know full well that the rule should be 1, mm-hmm. because just using it on a day-to-day basis, I found that it created a better experience for my staff and my crew. So that is some of the stuff that we use. Okay, but after a while, like here's so much Courier, like wall to wall, like, and this was like my day every day for 8, 9, 10 hours at a time. Mm. Oh, and the way that TV production works, I definitely like went into a different room on a birthday party on a Sunday and disappeared for like an hour and a half because I had to put out a script. The demands are high for the job. It's a lot of hurrying and waiting. So then after a while, like any writer would tell me, you know, after staring at Courier for like their entire lives, that I just can't keep looking at this. It's like these words aren't looking like words anymore, which I suppose happens with any project. Like anytime I'm looking at like big chunky blocks of type, but I find that like Courier in particular is maybe not the easiest on the eyes in like a long term. For, you know, as a long-term typeface to be used in all your projects. So we all kind of hit that same wall when it comes to scripts, and if it's the creative process or something external or what, but I feel like some of it could also be Courier itself. So so now we're in Act 3. We can talk a little bit about where type is going in terms of screenplays. Spoiler alert, not very far, but you know, one step at a time. So yeah, in the near future, like as people keep releasing new versions of software, as we continue to develop new typefaces, each different version of software will create their own little version of Courier that they can own and manipulate. The one that I liked to use a lot on my shows towards the end was Courier Prime. And there are a lot of features that I found made the type more readable and more pleasant to use. It was designed by John August, and I forget his actual type designer's name. Oh man, But you should check out John August. He's a screenwriter by trade, and he's built a business essentially creating useful tools with a strong design sensibility that help writers be more successful. So he'll create a new typeface, he'll build new screenwriting software, he'll create new story mechanics, games and rules and guidelines. It's a really cool business model. It's very forward thinking. So Courier Prime is something that is the default in all of his screenwriting software, and I incorporated it into Final Draft. And there are nice details here that I really like. For instance, the curve on the foot of the A here, the increased weight overall, really. The redrawn G, and also just proper italics, like actual italics, which they don't do in standard Courier. It's just an oblique, So now, with these, I think they're really lovely italics. It feels like a real typeface instead of like half of one. So I think that's a cool step in the right direction. I enjoyed using Courier Prime a lot, and so did everyone on the shows, or at least the people who cared about that stuff, And then as far as the application of Courier outside of screenplays, because that's basically to me the only place where it really regularly lives. Here are a couple of projects from a type festival in Berlin, I believe. Finding new ways to apply Courier that have the same sort of that have the same sort of can have the same sort of modern energy or youthful weight to it and a freshness to it that we don't normally associate with the typeface. I thought these were really a couple of good examples, but it was hard. It was hard to find contemporary uses of Courier. Like it's not the sexiest, admittedly, but I'd be very curious to see what other applications exist outside of the one that I and the rest of LA are most familiar with. So in terms of, if we were to broaden the conversation a little bit beyond just Courier as a typeface and talk more about design and the relationship that it has with entertainment and television, I was kind of a designer by accident, by virtue of my job. It's a lot of and honestly, any production is going to be a lot of trial and error, but it's not as methodical as design is. And I feel like down the road it could be. But the one thing that I definitely am very thankful for, having had this strong background in entertainment and in television and in writing specifically, was the discipline of finding stories and taking people on a journey and using tools in order to get someone from point A to B. And it influences my day-to-day process. It's something that I think about all the time. And fundamentally, I do think that I do consider writing to be like a really essential form of design. And it's the words themselves, and as well as how they're laid out on a page, So I really love projects that combine both of those skills for me. So that's my spiel on Courier. So there you go. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Paul.
Yes.
I was just wondering if there's any questions for Paul. Please let us know either in the chat bar or on the questions and topics tab. That would be great. Meanwhile, maybe just ask you a couple questions. So I know you talked about INT Courier. What does INT stand for?
Yes. So the shorthand for scene headings is interior is abbreviated to INT, period. And then exterior is abbreviated to EXT, period. So anytime that you're on a set, right, that's always going to be an interior shot. And then you don't really get this in half hours, but you get this in hour-longs all the time. You'll go on location, you'll be in the woods, or you're going to be on a city block, and that's an exterior shot. By breaking it down really quickly, like we're able to sort interior shots with exterior shots, we can get a sense of what our days of production are going to look like. So the goal, for instance, is like, an ideal goal, I think, for most shows with a fair amount of exterior shots is to do 5 in, 3 out.
Mm-hmm.
So you write deliberately to that. We're like, okay, we're going to spend 5 days on our standing sets, maybe build a couple of new things if they have the budget. And then if we need to go out, we're going to pick these 3 days, and also pick 3 days where all the shots happen and the light is the same. So like, we're going to do all day shots for this one.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to save this one night shot. And we really try not to do night shoots often, because that's how you kill your crew.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you're just like, call time is at 8 p.m. and you're going to be working for 12 hours. So like, have fun, like trying to stay up until like 8 in the morning. It's night shoots are brutal. But that's why we have those distinctions, so that we can identify very quickly what kind of shot it is and where we are and the resources that are necessary for that. So
your title was Interior Courier, meaning you're using Courier for the inside.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like like it's if it were a set, if it were a typeface that we were exploring from within,
right.
Then that's where the title would come from.
That makes sense.
Although so that's kind of that was my way of framing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. It's interesting that the different types of formats of show actually have different lettings. Now, are some of those the way that Final Draft, are those defaults in Final Draft?
The Final Draft will come pre-installed with templates. Templates are things that are submitted or requested by Final Draft or whatever screenplay formatting software you have, that they basically strip out any of the content. They'll build in all the macros the way that you like to use them, and then they'll make them available as templates when you want to open up a new project. And, after a while, I would just make my own, because no one template was going to do all the things for me that I wanted it to do. So I built my own and then shared that with the staff, and then everything worked out pretty smoothly. But a lot of the templates that you see, a lot of those formats come pre-installed. And they're just kind of industry standards. It's same things that we've inherited, but that's the sort of thing no one really questions it. No, most scripts don't really deviate that far from the default, unless you're my show. And then it's like, and then things are I'm really particular about the way things are laid out. Mm-hmm. But because I try not, when I was like setting type, I really tried to make sure that, okay, this is the one thing I get to deliver. I didn't want it to be an afterthought.
Right. So then you would choose a template based on if it's a half an hour or if it's a full hour feature.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. And so the letting and the margins and everything was already set, the formatting of the...
Yeah. And down to the idiosyncrasies, like when Grey's sets their dialogue margins easily like a full 1/4 inch out farther than any other show, that's already there. If someone wanted to do something very tight, like a lunatic, for letting, it's already built in, and you don't have to really think about it. That way you get to do the thing that you want to do in that program, which is right and not set.
Can you change the typeface?
Oh, you can change. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you totally can. Oh man, we can do all sorts of crazy things. The one thing that I would usually change a lot from draft to draft, mm-hmm. to keep track, is that I don't know if I included any examples of this, but on the right side margin, what you'll generally have are asterisks for revisions, so that when people look at several versions of a draft, they can see what changed very quickly, So what I would do is I would change the asterisks to a writer's initials, okay. or something that definitely called attention to itself, so I could know, okay, well, you changed that and you changed this. A lot of it was a lot of traffic management when it comes to handling these files, particularly when this happens a lot on a show. We'll have a gangbang, for the lack of a more elegant term.
Okay, which is what?
So you're under the gun. You have to deliver a script in a day, mm-hmm. 2 days maybe, which is an impossible task for one person.
Mm-hmm.
So you divvy up a script to an entire staff. Either 1 or 2 writers get a storyline that gets spread out through each act, mm-hmm. Scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, all the way through. Or you just give one writer an entire act, like the first 10 pages or the second 10 pages. And then it would be up to someone like me to stitch it all together. And that was always fun, because because writers are smart, but when they're stressed, sometimes they don't follow instructions.
Sure.
So it's like it's a lot of stitching together. But it always kind of works out at the end, and then it always ends up being like 80 odd pages, and then they're gonna have to cut because that's what happens when you get multiple people on it. You overwrite. So,
have you seen any scripts that people are using different typefaces or different formatting? Does anything like that come across crazy from writers that they just want to do their own thing?
Okay, so like the craziest thing I think we all saw, and it made an impact when it was floating around development season. Do you remember Heroes?
Yes.
So when Tim Kring wrote the pilot script, there were illustrations and hand-drawn notes and annotations built in. Like he was very sensitive to the fact that like someone's going to pick this up and they're going to be like, oh, what's this script with like a bug crawling on the top of it? No. And then that's part of the sale,
I see.
Right? Like it's kind of like it's going to stand out in a pile.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same reason like, you put a swear word in the title, or it's just like, because you got to, when it comes to development season, it gets really competitive. People are going to want to pick up that script and be able to talk about that script before anything else. It's like, it's kind of a branding conversation, actually.
So he illuminated his manuscript.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
I see.
Yeah. So that was that. It helped set the tone and attract a lot of great people to that show.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the power of, really thinking about a screenplay as an asset that, if well designed, could make the difference between, getting the talent you want and not, or getting the pickup that you want or not,
Right.
So,
so it's not only the content, but it's also the marketing piece.
In a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's funny because like I look at a lot of the deliverables in TV and I think of the opportunities that could be there if we were to like really lay it out, if we really wanted to sell it. Because the thing is that, and I find this with clients all the time now in design, people don't really want to read. You kind of have to make your layouts engaging in a way where people will actually want to read it. That so many times in TV, like the machine has to move so fast that you go for the path of least resistance. But I find like, it wouldn't take that much more work if we were to do it like this or present it like that. But then sometimes what happens is like tall poppy syndrome. Like you don't want to stand out like too much,
Mm-hmm.
because then you'll call attention to yourself, but then that becomes a very high risk game, then it better be good. So yeah, I like, especially as an industry of like professional storytellers, right? Like I would hope that they would want to like find new ways of doing things. And it's really what attracts me to design, is that it is really about questioning everything.
Right.
So yeah, I think that if I were to get my hands dirty, like if I were to ever weirdly find myself in a position where I'd have control over that sort of thing, I was like, okay, well, let's revisit this. How would we like keep our monospaced fonts, keep our Courier, keep our grids, but then somehow make a document that is easier to read, that serves your crew better,
mm-hmm.
that saves us money, that makes things more producible, that takes days out. Like there might be a there.
Right. Yeah, no, that would be, I think that changing the typeface will definitely make you stand out. But if anyone wants to break tradition, maybe that's too much of a risk.
And that's what's so tough with TV, because people are so romantic about it, like they have a love-hate relationship with it, but they'll keep it. It's the devil they know,
mm-hmm.
in a way.
You don't see that changing at all?
What will change is the requirements to make content that move. Like you have this industry of network and cable television, because it takes a lot of people and a lot of resources to make stuff.
Right.
But then, like, we're here talking. I watch tons of stuff on YouTube. We stream things.
Mm-hmm.
So, as more resources become accessible, then people are then able to find their own ways of communicating with smaller teams,
mm-hmm.
to find new ways to tell stories and to format things and write scripts. By lowering the threshold for production of video content, I guess. That's what will change. That's what will open things up.
It's interesting. I mean, like you said, content is changing. There's new channels. There's more, the way it's being delivered is now in a full season all at once. It's not one by one. People are binging. The way we consume content is totally different. So the way that's delivered typographically might change, but we don't know yet.
Right. Like imagine, and we only break things up into episodes because that's just how we're able to manage it.
Right.
Imagine if you could let's figure out a way to write 13 episodes in one document,
I would watch 24 hours of House of Cards straight.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I would do that.
See, that's so good. That's so good.
It would be great.
So that's where, as the format changes, then the way that we plan for it, the way that we write, that will change too.
Right. Okay, I have a question from Alyssa. Thank you, Alyssa, for asking a question. Do you know Alyssa, Paul? She was in Gemma's session. She was sitting next to Michael.
Oh, great. Oh, yeah. Hi, Alyssa. Nice to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
She says, I've been looking into graphic design for publications that don't usually get much priority when it comes to quality of design, things like comic books and presentations at conventions or public talks. Do you think there is a potential for pairing these writers to add a design flair to scripts and pitches like your Heroes example?
I mean, if I down the road when I amass these more work and become more senior, ideally what I would love to do is have some sort of consultancy where I get to work with writers and creative people who work in film and TV and give them the best shot possible in order to make sure that their pitches work, right? I mean, it's the sort of thing that you would count on management to do or count on agents to do. And they can definitely talk you through the process in a very traditional way, like a verbal pitch and have these things ready. But to have a sort of design sensibility to make sure that your brand lives well on social channels, that in your website, and it's reflected in all of your printed work and your publication work. I think that would be an invaluable opportunity. Because we see in big business, for larger companies, how powerful design is when you have that as part of your structure from the very beginning. And I think the same thing would absolutely hold true for, for a writer who works on contract, because it's a tough game out there, and you gotta stick out even that 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch, design can help you do that. It can help make that difference. So I think it's a great idea.
So you think there's a potential?
Absolutely. It's just tough though, because it's weird. Television writers, when they're union, I mean, they make really good money for what they do. But then it becomes this hard thing of what are creative services worth to them? Because it's already built into the show. And if they had to ask other things, they could ask friends or friends of friends. It becomes a culture of favors and giveaways and freebies and all that sort of stuff for at a low to no cost. So it's about then continuing to prove our worth as design professionals and showing people in some concrete way that the return on investment when you make design part of the conversation is really something that's worth investing in.
That's very good. Actually, that's something that we all need to do. We all need to help communicate the value of design, especially to all sorts of other industries. I mean, we as designers already know the value of design and what it can do for businesses, companies, organizations. But for some reason, people just think, oh, well, I know Photoshop, or, they don't understand really the design thinking behind it. They just think it's visuals, or they can draw something and put it on their refrigerator and it's something that they did. It's more personal and less of business value, communication value.
Yeah, they're going to be in the same spot as I've definitely had bosses, or when I was in-house, for instance, as a designer, and I've definitely had bosses they know design is important, but they're not really sure how to talk about it or how to or work with that kind of a creative. And bizarrely, I kind of find that with a lot of writers too. They are creative, but in a very different way than we are.
Right.
As designers. So it's they'll kind of still think about it in a very producery sort of way. So yeah, it's a matter. Producery. It's a very technical term. So it's just a matter of reframing the conversation.
Right. Thank you, Alyssa, for asking. Now I have a question from Patrick, and I know you know Patrick as well. Patrick says, submitting content for many publications devolves to writing 12-point double-spaced Times New Roman, certainly not designed. With a legacy of these standards, does design really offer value just for editing content, or is it better to keep it less personal?
Okay, that's a lot.
Patrick is throwing a hard one.
Okay, say the question again so I can unpack it.
Okay, just for your, if you look underneath the video screen, you can actually read it if I'm not reading.
Oh, there it is. Oh, okay. There it is. Ah, cool. I have to say, Crowdcast is cool, man. Okay, here we go. So also, okay.
Like, is it more functional or is it? Go ahead.
Right. So I see what Patrick's question is. When you're at that stage, when you're at that early stage, and it's not really meant to be seen by anybody but say your editor.
Right.
Why would you include design that early in the conversation? I think that's what the question is.
Is that what you're saying, Patrick?
I think this is to let me know if I'm off.
Okay.
Because I can definitely see that once you have that relationship, right, with someone, then it just becomes like it becomes format agnostic. Get it into any format. I already kind of know what to expect. But I find sometimes that like with scripts, particularly during development season, like it's a calling card, like sometimes people don't really know what to expect. I kind of feel like design still would matter in an early stage when this publication or something that was meant to be very internal gets broadcast to a wider audience. Like anytime we would gather scripts for pilot season and development season, there's tons of stuff that I wasn't meant to see. We just share it all because it's kind of an open secret and it's kind of fun. And we all kind of get to play like armchair development executive. They should definitely pick these things up and those things up. And you spend a lot of time reading everything. And even for those who do this professionally, there's a certain level of fatigue. There's going to be a certain level of diminishing returns when presented with that much content. So if there's anything that we can do to lighten that load, then I think it behoves us as designers to figure out a solution for that.
And like you said earlier, yes, it is sort of interior. I mean, it's only an internal document, but if you're using it to sell something to a network, you're sending the script out, then there is a little bit of design consideration needed. Design value there.
It is so competitive. Like you've got to stand out. I mean, like it's, and ideally, like the story would be amazing, and stories are amazing. You have I've read so many wonderful stories, right? And it didn't necessarily matter the way that it was presented because the ideas themselves were so powerful, the words themselves were so powerful. Right. But in my head, it was just kind of like if you could stack the deck,
sure,
why not?
I hope that answered your question, Patrick.
I hope so too. No, because it just reminds me of like my time writing for the newspaper in college, and those deliverables were exactly like that. Right.
Right.
They are exactly like that. But it's so funny because I feel like I could have solved a lot of problems with a copy editor or with my own editor if I had already known layout, line length, and all that sort of jazz in advance. The sort of stuff that you're not supposed to think about because that's supposed to be out to another department. But it'd be so I could have saved myself a lot of time and energy if I had been more cognizant of the way that the content would finally be presented.
Well, especially because you also read scripts and reviewed scripts. So that's a lot of reading. If it's not formatted correctly, it's just painful for you to get through, right? Without being able to pick out certain things.
Yeah. Like it was work.
Yeah.
And that was so hard. Like, because I really do enjoy reading, but then I would come home and like the last thing I'd want to do is like read a book,
right.
Like that was the last thing. Oh, you want to read more? No. Like at that point, I just need to like not stare at something, and put it away.
But the things you could read are possibly magazines or something that was formatted in a way that was much more enjoyable to read rather than just Courier on a white sheet.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's, it's something, it's always tough when there's something that happens in a script and someone misses something or something in the production goes off the rails, and you could kind of get it down to like script level.
Right.
And you're just kind of like, oh, well, I can see there was a miscommunication here. I can see why that happened. And just kind of like, how do you fix that problem? But then the answer sometimes gets so big. You're like, I don't know how I would do that without completely like alienating a crew.
Right.
So
I know it's more tradition to shift instead of just.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of audiences involved basically with the script. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for spending this time with us.
Oh, thank you for having me, Rachel. This was so fun.
Oh, good.
I will. I look forward to the future dojos. Best of luck to you and Michael and the entire TypeEd team. This has been an honor and a privilege.
Oh, good. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I really, really love your insight on scripts. So hopefully you can make a difference in the world, in the TV world.
We'll see. Yeah. I'll keep you posted.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you, Amanda, and everyone at KBDA and everyone else. Thanks so much. Have a good day, guys.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye.